of all of these stories, Tulananda is the one who's actually up to something. This is Buddhist Books Podcast, episode 179, Tipiṭaka, part 110, in which we will begin the next group of 10 Pācittiya rules of expiation for nuns. Bhikkhunivibhaṅga is the name of the section. The rules for nuns, nun analysis, in the Tipiṭaka, the very earliest of Buddhist scriptures. If this is your first time seeing me, you may wish to click up here and start with the beginning of the Tipiṭaka playlist so that you'll kind of understand what's happening here. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's see what the Bhikkhunivibhaṅga has in store for us today. Expiation, Pācittiya 11. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now, at that time, a man, a relative of a nun, who was a pupil of Bhikkhunivibhaṅga. Let's show Bhikkhunivibhaṅga. Now, that is obviously not a cartoon character. That is an actual illustration of Bhikkhunivibhaṅga, who I think is called the Golden Goddess nun later on. This is the second time her name has been mentioned. And I look forward to learning more about her as we get into the other parts of the three baskets. Okay, a man who was a relative of a nun who was a pupil of Bhikkhunivibhaṅga, so the nun was a pupil of Bhikkhunivibhaṅga, set out from a village for Savatthi on some business. Then that nun stood together with and further talked with that man, the one with the other, in the dark of the night when there was no light. Those who were modest nuns, spread it about, saying, quote, "How can this nun stand together with and further talk with a man, the one with the other, in the dark of the night when there is no light?" End quote. Quote, "Is it true, as is said, monks, that a nun, when there was no light," end quote, quote, "It is true, Lord," end quote, the Enlightened One, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, "How, monks, can a nun, when there was no light? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, yet, end pleased, this rule of training. Whatever nun should stand together with or should talk with a man, the one with the other, in the dark of the night when there is no light, there is an offense of expiation." End quote. So I think it was the first rule, wasn't it? Of Parajika, the defeat rules for nuns. Certainly the defeat rules for monks is no sex. So there's a lot of rules that are basically like oriented in that direction. So forbidding a nun from talking with a man, presumably who's not her relative, in the dark of the night, is designed, A, to prevent something from going in that direction, right? And B, to keep people from talking. Because part of the concern, I mean, it was outright stated earlier, I'm not making it up, is the concern for the reputation of the order. So and the kind of at least the way it's written, when Ananda came to Lord Buddha at the beginning of Tipiṭaka and said, how can we make sure that our order lasts a long time? He said, well, we'll make a lot of rules and have everybody recite them on regular intervals. And so that's the main concern. So we're dealing with kind of the root chakra of survival for, which is, again, I mentioned last time that these are very down to earth. Reading these are very down to earth. And it's also old-fashioned. So sometimes there's a double standard with men and women. But I think that a monk talking together with a woman in the night would also be frowned upon, but there's no explicit rule for that. But anyway, I won't go on about the double standard today. Hopefully, we'll see. Whatever means 3 dots. Next time, we'll do the flashback. None means 3 dots. In the dark of the night means after the sun has gone down. When there is no light means when it is dark. Man means a human man, not a yaka, not a departed one, not an animal, one who is learned, competent to stand, to talk. Together with means together. The one with the other means there is a man as well as a nun. Should stand together with means if she stands within a reach of a man's hand, there is an offense of expiation. Or should talk with means if she talks standing within a reach of a man's hand, there is an offense of expiation. If she stands or talks having left parentheses the space of end parentheses a reach of the hand, there is an offense of wrongdoing. So if there's some space between them, then it's the lowest rule. If she stands together with or talks with a yaka, or a departed one, so like a demon or a ghost, or a eunuch, or an animal in human form, there is an offense of wrongdoing. There is no offense if some learned friend comes to be, parentheses, present, end parentheses. If she, not wishing for a private place, stands or talks thinking about something else, not wishing for a private place. Okay, so they're in private, but she didn't mean to be in private. It wasn't intentional. All right, I mean, that's pretty relaxed as far as rules go, right? If she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. So if she just kind of goes out in front of the nunnery and there's a man standing there and she's like, oh, tomorrow when you come, could you make sure that such and such? And someone's, sister, what are you doing standing alone in the dark of night talking with a man? And she's like, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to stand alone in the dark of night with a man. I was just letting him know that tomorrow when he comes to you. And there's not even a wrongdoing. That's reasonable. All right. It's a good start. Expiation, Pācittiya 12. At one time, the enlightened one, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, a man, a relative of a nun who was a pupil of Bhadakampilani. Let's see if we can find a different illustration of the same golden goddess nun. I don't know what you saw. Hopefully it was something. Set out from a village for Savatthi on some business. Then that nun, thinking, quote, it is forbidden by the Lord to stand together with, parentheses, or, end parentheses, talk with a man, the one with the other, in the dark of the night when there is no light, end quote, stood together with and talked with that very man, the one with the other, in a secluded place. All right, yeah. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, parentheses, XI, that's 11, the previous one. 1, instead of in the dark of the night when there is no light, read in a secluded place, end parentheses, 3 dots, quote, 3 dots. This rule of training. Whatever none should stand together with or should talk with a man, the one with the other in a secluded place, there is an offense of expiation, end quote. There's a lot of things I want to do in my life. There's books that are kind of the idea of them are in my head. There's some that I've written already, so that's there. If you're interested in my books, feel free to check out edwardreeb.com. But anyway, this isn't an advertisement for my books. The point is that if I get around to it, since these are public domain, I will go through with a fine-tooth comb and fill in the 3 dots and write an alternate version of the Tipiṭaka where every word is included. Because it just rubs me the wrong way. I mean, even though there's some things repeated. Again, I always bring it back to, what if someone did this with the Bible? That would be considered disrespectful, would it not? If instead of, on the 3rd day the Lord said, they said on the 3rd day 3 dots, right? Because the Lord said, all this the Lord said, let's just put in 3 dots. No. That would be considered disrespectful, and this is disrespectful. I mean, for scholarly purposes, I get it. You want to get all the information, but you don't want to clutter it up with a lot of repeated paragraphs and repeated pages. But still, I mean, the fact that this is the only translation that I'm aware of the original Pali Tipiṭaka in English, and that... Well, anyway, okay, I've talked about this before. I'll stop repeating myself. Whatever means 3 dots, none means 3 dots. A secluded place means it is secluded by a wall built of wattle and daub, or by a door, or by a screen, or by a screen wall, or by a tree, or by a pillar, or by a sack, or it is secluded by anything whatsoever. Man means a human man, 3 dots, parentheses, XI, comma, 2, end parentheses, 3 dots. If she is the first wrongdoer. Okay. All right. These are very short because they're putting most of it in 3 dots. So I will read 4 of them today. So here's the 3rd one. Expiation. Pācittiya 13. At one time, the enlightened one, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi, in the Jeta Grove, in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, a relative of a nun who was a pupil of Bhadakampilani set out from a village for Savatthi on some business. Then that nun, thinking, quote, it is forbidden by the Lord to stand together with, parentheses, or, end parentheses, talk with a man, the one with the other in a secluded place, end quote, stood together with and talked with that very man in an open place. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, parentheses, XI1, instead of the dark of the night when there is no light, read in an open place, end parentheses, 3 dots, quote, 3 dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should stand together with or should talk with a man, the one with the other, in an open place, there is an offense of expiation, end quote. So, I mean, since it's not in the dark of night, this is presumably in the daytime. Okay, so a nun should not stand and talk with a man, ever, under any circumstances. I mean, they could have said that, but they decided to do it this way. Not in the dark of night, not in a secluded place, not anywhere ever under any circumstances. Okay. Whatever means 3 dots, None means three dots. Open place means what is not secluded by a wall built of wattle and daub, three dots, or by a sack, or what is not secluded by anything, whatever. Man means a human man, three dots, parentheses, XI, comma, 2, and parentheses, three dots, if she is the first wrongdoer. Expiation, Pācittiya 14. At one time, the enlightened one, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, the nun Tulananda, it's been a minute since we've seen Tulananda, stood together with and talked with a man, the one with the other, on a carriage road and in a cul-de-sac and at crossroads. That's different from out in the open? All right. And she whispered in his ear, and she dismissed the nun who was her companion. I mean, she's, of all of these stories, Tulananda is the one who's actually up to something here. Those who were modest nuns, three dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can the lady Tulananda stand together with, three dots, at a crossroads and whisper in his ear and dismiss the nun who is her companion? End quote, three dots. Quote, is it true, as is said, monks, that the nun Tulananda stood together with, three dots, and dismissed the nun who is her companion? End quote. Quote, it is true, Lord. End quote. The enlightened one, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, how, monks, can the nun Tulananda stand together with, three dots, and dismiss the nun who is her companion? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses, yet, end parentheses, pleased, three dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should stand together with or should talk with a man, the one with the other, on a carriage road, or in a cul-de-sac, or at a crossroads, or should whisper in his ear, or should dismiss the nun who is her companion, there is an offense of expiation, end quote, whatever means, three dots. Nun means three dots. Carriage road means it is called a carriage road. Cul-de-sac means they depart by that, parentheses, way, end parentheses, by which they entered. Crossroads means it is called a place where four roads meet. Ah, but what about where three roads meet? Man means a human man, not a yaka, not a departed one, not an animal. One who is learned, competent to stand, to talk. Together with means together. The one with the other means there is a man as well as a nun. Should stand together with means, three dots, offense of expiation. Or should talk with means, three dots, offense of expiation. Or should whisper in his ear means, if she talks close into a man's ear, there is an offense of expiation. Or should dismiss the nun who is her companion, if desiring to indulge in bad habits, she then dismisses the nun who is her companion, there is an offense of wrongdoing. In leaving the region of sight or the region of hearing, there is an offense of wrongdoing. When she is left, there is an offense of expiation. If she stands or talks, having left, parentheses, the space of, and parentheses, a reach of the hand, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she stands together with or talks with a yaka or a departed one, or a eunuch or an animal in human form, there is an offense of wrongdoing. There is no offense if some learned friend comes to be, parentheses, present, end parentheses, if, not wishing for a private place, she stands or talks thinking about something else. If, not wishing to indulge in bad habits, she dismisses the nun who is her companion, if there is something to be done, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. All right. I think think it goes without saying. I think whoever's watching this is familiar with the basics of Lord Buddha's teachings, but the question might arise, why? Why so much emphasis on not spending time alone with, it's heteronormative back then, with someone who you might become interested in romantically, right? So there's all these things to prevent that from happening and to prevent others from seeing and saying, hey, what's that nun doing? I mean, that's the reason they would think that is because they're on a path which is meant to be without any of these kinds of attachments. And that, of course, relates back to the idea that desire leads to suffering, attachment leads to suffering. And the path that the monks and nuns, when they decided to become monks and nuns, set themselves upon is the path to reach nirvana, enlightenment, as quickly as possible in that context. I mean, as a nun or a monk, not as a lay follower. Later on in the Mahayana Sutras, there's, I don't know the name of the sutra, but there's a point where a lay follower comes and scolds the orders of monks and nuns, telling them that they're too focused on all these rules and stuff. And okay, so that's an evolution on, or another stage of the development of Buddhism, which became Mahayana, and then that became Vajrayana, or Vajrayana was built upon that foundation. So we're learning about the lowest foundation before we start to learn about those other more subtle levels, rather than jumping ahead, which is what a lot of folks like to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just different from what I've decided to do at this stage in my life. Anyway, so avoid those entanglements, avoid those attachments, because the last thing you want is a nun sitting there meditating and she's thinking about the guy that she's going to be talking to later that day, because she's not going to make any progress toward, that emptiness state. That state which I don't presume to be a teacher of, which we will learn more about when we get to these books, and then these books as well. This is the Abhidhamma, so that's sort of the development upon the teaching, and then this is the teaching itself. So these are the rules. Okay, that's it for today. I hope everybody's doing well, and I don't think there's anything else, so I will go ahead and close. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us, and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be at peace. Until next time.